somewhere past 40, the questions change shape without warning. Not what should I do, but what did I actually do with the hours I had? Not who should I become, but who did I become while I was busy planning someone else? So here are 5 old thoughts, offered slowly, in case one of them is already sitting inside you, unnamed. Nobody manages their calendar the way they manage their bank account. A missed payment gets noticed immediately. A wasted afternoon disappears without a trace, unremarked, uncounted, as though it never cost anything at all. Seneca watched the wealthy Romans around him guard their coins obsessively, while handing their days over to absolutely anyone who asked for them. Dinner invitations they dreaded, arguments they didn't need to have, grudges maintained out of habit, long after the original offense had faded from memory. He found this strange enough to write about it directly. People will fight over a disputed inheritance for years, he noted, yet surrender decades of their own attention without a single complaint. Why does one loss provoke outrage and the other pass unnoticed? His argument was never that life is too short. He said the opposite, actually. Life is long enough if a person spends it on purpose. What runs out early is not time itself, but the portion of it a person ever consciously directed anywhere. The moment this stops being an interesting historical opinion and starts being something felt in the body, tends to arrive without warning. A parent looks different in a photograph than in memory. A name in your phone belongs to someone you haven't spoken to in years, for no reason either of you could explain. An entire season passes, and none of it can be accounted for. Where did it actually go? Time was never stolen from anyone. It was handed over, coin by coin, mostly to people and situations that never once asked whether it was welcome. There is a story about a river that removes death from anyone who drinks its water. A man finds it, drinks, and expects the rest of his life to feel like relief. Instead, centuries pass, and something in him goes quiet in a way that has nothing to do with peace. Borges built entire libraries, forking gardens, endless corridors out of this single unease. Not a love of infinity, despite how the stories read on the surface, but a suspicion about what infinity would actually do to anything placed inside it. If every risk can simply be attempted again later, does it remain a risk at all? If every choice can eventually be undone by an eternity of second chances, what happens to the weight any single choice once carried? This is easy to nod along with, and difficult to actually feel while young, when the number of remaining years still functions, psychologically, as though it were unlimited. It becomes something else entirely once a person starts noticing how much a single ordinary evening with a specific, aging, irreplaceable person can hold. Not because the evening changed, because the count behind it did. Borges never argued that death should be welcomed. He asked something stranger and quieter instead. What if the edge is the very thing giving the water inside it any shape worth having at all? Most people keep death somewhere at the edge of the map, real but distant, scheduled for a decade with no name yet, happening to other people in the meantime. It is treated as an event, something that eventually starts, rather than something already running underneath everything currently happening. Heidegger rejected this arrangement entirely. Death, in his account, is not a future appointment waiting at the far end of a life, disconnected from everything before it. It is a structure already present inside the smallest decisions being made right now, the quiet fact of limits shaping what anything means, before a person even notices the shaping happening. He was harsher than most philosophers about why people avoid this. He described an almost automatic drift into sameness, doing what is done, saying what is said, filling days with tasks that require no confrontation with anything difficult, because difficulty tends to force the limits back into view. Is comfort ever really just comfort? Or is it sometimes a very effective way of not looking at the one fact that would change how everything else gets weighed? What he called authentic living had nothing dramatic about it. It simply meant keeping your own finitude somewhere in view, not as dread, but as context, and letting that context actually inform the small daily choices most people postpone toward some later, more available version of themselves. The strange part is how late this usually gets understood, not as an idea encountered in a book, but as something noticed retroactively. Was the deadline ever really approaching from somewhere ahead, or had it been sitting inside every decision from the very beginning, whether anyone was looking at it or not? Early on, the question tends to face forward. What might I become? It assumes open road, assumes every version of yourself remains reachable, if only the correct choices get made from this point onward. Frankl arrived somewhere else, and arrived there through circumstances almost no one would choose. Years inside concentration camps, the loss of nearly everyone he loved, none of it selected, none of it avoidable through better decisions. Out of that, a different question took shape, one that only becomes available once enough has actually happened to a person. Not what could I become, but what has actually become of my life, given everything that occurred, including the parts I never chose. His most disruptive claim reversed an assumption most people never examine. Meaning is not something hidden out in the world, waiting to be discovered through the right career or the right relationship. Life poses a question continuously, through whatever arrives, wanted or not, and meaning gets generated through the answer a person gives it, not uncovered through searching. This stays theoretical until something happens that cannot be undone. A diagnosis, a death, a failure with no available explanation. At that point, the question stops facing outward toward possibility and starts facing inward toward response. Not, what do I want from this? What does this actually require of me? There is a specific kind of ache that has nothing to do with meaninglessness and everything to do with distance, the space between the life once pictured at 20 and the actual, particular life currently being lived, with all its specific rooms, specific people, specific compromises. Camus called the deeper structure underneath this the absurd, the mismatch between a mind that keeps demanding coherent explanation and a universe that offers none. But underneath the philosophy sits something more personal, something closer to what people actually feel, without ever naming it precisely. The gap between the imagined life and the one that showed up instead. He refused every available comfort here. No promise that the gap eventually closes. No guarantee that patience gets rewarded with clarity. No universe waiting on the other side of enough suffering to finally explain itself. This was the harder, more honest part of his argument, and the part most people quietly skip past. What he offered instead was smaller and, in its own way, sturdier. Not resolution, just the plain fact of still being here, still capable of turning toward whatever is actually in front of you, rather than whatever you once expected to find there. He called the willingness to do that a kind of yes, not enthusiastic, not resigned, simply chosen. What would it actually take for you to say the same?